During a semester, a student receives scores of 76, 80, 83, 71, 80, and 78 on 6 tests. What is the student's average score for these 6 tests? So what we first need is the answer to this. What's the equation? The equation that we're going to be working with today has to do with the average, or for this problem rather. The average is the list of items added together, that's supposed to be an n right here, divided by the number of items that are in the list. The variables here in this equation are x to the subscript 1, subscript 2, plus, and then there's a dot, dot, dot. Actually, I should have a plus here, meaning there could be as many as you want. And then the last one is x to the n, meaning of how, it doesn't matter how many you've got, the last one is n. So n is the largest number of items in your list. Here we've got, let's see, 6 tests, so I know that I've got x1, x2, x3, x4, x5, and x6, and I also know that from this equation, and that n being the last one here, n is equal to 6. Okay, I'm going to take them right here. Now let's see if I can actually use this software. Let's just see, shall we? I'm going to attempt to highlight the numbers that I'm going to be jotting down. Hey, look at that, I did it. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to basically list them here. This is how you use a piece of paper to solve problems, or this is how I teach how to use it. This is a variable stack. This is your working area where you typically start with an equation, and then from the whatever problem that you're working on, you fill in the variables you have, apply that to the equation, and then work out whichever ones you don't know, and that's what you're usually solving for. Okay, so let's list them here. We've got 76, 80, 83, and I'm going to really try and do a good job of actually writing well, which I don't do well. 80 and 78. Okay, so I'm going to fill in this equation. It's only going to be kind of temporary because typically I do not add, and most, well, I don't know if most people do or don't, but I don't add horizontally. I typically add vertically, which is what I'm going to do over here. But to put it in the equation, you know what I could do? I could do this. The total of these, this equals x total over n. Now x total is just another variable that we get to create that is going to equal all of these summed together. So x total is going to equal this value right here, and then I get to place it really simply right in the top, divided by n. And we already know is 6 right here. You know what? I might as well throw that bad boy right in there. So let's add these up. To add, typically like to look for things that add to 10 really easily. So we got 6, and here's a 4, 3 plus 1, so there's a 10, and then we've got an 8, so that gives me 18. We're going to carry the 1. Now we don't have any really easy adding to 10 here, but I do see that we have 1, 2, 3 8s, and here's yet another one, which is 7 and 1, so that gives me 4 8s, which is 32, plus a 14, so we got 3, 2, and I'll just use a little scratch paper over here, 32 and 14, I know that I'm going to have a 6 and a 4, so I can put these guys here, 468. That's the total of our 8 test scores. 468. All right. So now what we need to do is divide 468 by 6. Okay, nobody, I don't know too many people who love division, but actually division and multiplication aren't really that different. I know some people might argue with me, but I would argue back. Okay, but before we do that, let's do a little trick that we can do to help simplify this. We're going to break it down into some easy factors. Factors are two things multiplied together that give you a product. For example, 6 is the product of the two factors, 3 times 2. And if I had a factor in 468 that was one of these factors as well, then I could cancel them. I'll show you that in a second as well. And as a matter of fact, I know that I do because 468 is an even number, so I'm going to basically divide that by 2 on the fly because it's real easy. If I divide 468 divided by 2, that's real easy because the 4 goes as a 2, the 6 becomes a 3, and the 8 becomes a 4, and this is now all times 2. Let me just prove that to you here real quick. I don't, may not need to. Here we go, my horrible writing skills. 2 into 4 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4, leaving us with 0. We're going to bring the 6 down. 2 times 3 is 6, giving us a 0. We're going to bring the 8 down. 2 times 4 is 8, and we are left with the remainder of 0. So we have 234 times 2 gives us this 468. Now we can cancel out this 2 here in the numerator and this 2 here in the denominator. That reduces the division that we're going to have to do in order to solve for the average. So now we have this. We have 234 divided by 3, which isn't so bad. Now I'm going to use my scratch area over here again to work out 234, and I'm going to try my best to do this a little bit more neatly. Okay, so we've got 3 into 2, that doesn't go, so that's a 0, but a leading 0 we typically don't write. So I'm just going to leave that blank. We're going to go to the next column, into 23. Well, I know my multiplication facts pretty well, so I know that 3 times 7 is 21, and this is where we subtract. That's supposed to be a subtraction sign here, leaving us with the 24. And I also know my multiplication facts that 3 times 8 is 24. Leaving us a remainder of 0. So I can now say this is, and if you want to do the same kind of thing here, I'll just take a really brief step. I'm going to break this down into its factors of 78 times 3 just to show you what that looks like. Right? And then I get to cancel this guy out. Now this doesn't become 0. This 3 becomes a 1. So it's 78 times 1 divided by 1. 78 times 1 divided by 1, which leaves us with 78 by itself. And that looks like it's one of the answers, and that looks like it's that one right there, C. All right. Next. Good job.